On December 4th, 1762, a manifesto of invitation printed in 5 languages was approved by Catherine II. It offered foreigners the possibility to immigrate to all regions of the Russian Empire. Those arriving in Russia were promised land and multiple benefits. The Russian government paid for all travel expenses. Each immigrant could choose his or her place of residence and occupation. In the list of places that were free and ready for colonization was Saratov, famous at that time for its fresh and cured fish industries. And so, Saratov was to become a new home for a group of immigrants that came to be known as the Volgagermans. After the promulgation of the manifesto signed by Catherine II on July 22nd of 1763, the first string of German families started to arrive from a Germany torn up by the 7 Years' War. The majority of newcomers arrived from the southwestern areas of Germany: Württemberg, Baden, Hessen, Schwabenland, Pfalz, Saxony, as well as from Bavaria, East Thüringen, and Westphalian dukedoms. Early arrivals into Saratov province of the Volga region, today's territories of Samara, Volgograd, and Saratov provinces, consisted of 70% Protestants and 30% Catholics. Immigrants who arrived in Russia didn't only come from Germany, but also Switzerland, France, Austria, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, and Poland. All of these groups were called German colonists by Russians, which became the standard name for any Europeans who didn't speak Russian. Groups of immigrants started to arrive in German seaports in 1763 and 1764, and from there they traveled to St. Petersburg. Many had debts that the Russian government would have to pay for them. The idea that immigrants were simply thrown into the open expanse of uncultivated fields is a myth. The Russian government thoroughly prepared for the arrival of Europeans and hired carpenters from the upper reaches of the Volga specifically to build houses for the newcomers. Once in Russia, each family received 15 desyatins of land, which equates to about 110 acres. Colonists accumulated a lot of debt by the time they arrived in Russia. The Russian government paid for the boat trip to St. Petersburg and gave them money once they arrived. Homes built for the colonists cost about 450 rubles. A horse, in comparison, cost 8 rubles. Only with the beginning of perestroika during the 1980s did discussion arise relating to the problem of establishing sovereignty for Russian, or as they were called at the time, Soviet Germans. There was also talk about the possible emigration of these Soviet citizens to their historically native land of Germany. For many Russians, it was almost insulting that towards the end of the 20th century, almost 2 million people of German descent resided in the USSR. Scholars were prohibited from conducting research on Russian Germans. Journalists weren't allowed to publish anything concerning their lives or their history. As a result, after several decades, Soviet people simply didn't know who these Germans were. They had no idea that, at the time, 1,200,000 Germans resided on Russian soil.
Так кто же они, российские немцы? Когда и как появились колонисты на Волге?
So who are these Russian Germans? When and how did colonists arrive on the Volga? The majority of such Germans came to Russia during the rule of Catherine II, who was at the time busy colonizing land surrounding the empire. Europe was weakened during this period. The 30 Years' War, which lasted from 1618 to 1648, the agrarian overpopulation, which didn't give its citizens ample land to farm. This wasn't Catherine's document, it was in the works going back to the 1740s. Prussia, Denmark were offering how they were attracting people to immigrate. So, in 1762, Russian diplomats gathered all of this information and created a document of invitation that combined all the offerings of the European countries and offered just a little bit more. So, people came to Russia.